Seats over here. Fourth row. Yeah, come on, it's okay. Right there. Right there. Okay. Is that open? I think so. Well done. Okay, well done. 2 more seats over here in row 4. Okay. All right, we're feeling 2 more seats over here in row 4. 2 more seats in row 4, right over here. You're good. Okay, 2 seats over there. Okay.
Well, I think we'll let these folks get situated.
All right.
I can kick things off, and I'll encourage them to.
Sure. Well, you know, I think.
All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. I know people are still filtering in. Please go ahead, come in, fill in. We do have, there's obviously a lot of people here tonight, so do please try to accommodate people who are still trickling in. I really appreciate it. So, good evening. Let's see. I'm not sure if I'm on wireless or this. Okay. Good evening. My name is Youngmoo Kim. I'm director of the Excite Center here at Drexel University. It's my privilege to welcome all of you here to our campus, and we are thrilled to have so many of you here tonight to hear from our distinguished speaker, John Maeda. We welcome those of you watching online. I think we actually have a YouTube stream going, so hello, Mom and Dad. Pretty sure we have an audience of 2 right now. Tonight's conversation, and go ahead and please come on in. There's still a few seats over here. Please feel free to come on in as you're entering. Tonight's conversation is the first of 6 such events that we'll be hosting this year and serves as the public launch for our Learning Innovation Project. I'll tell you a little bit more about that project in just a moment, but first let me tell you how you can all participate in tonight's program and to follow this new initiative. So please do feel free to tweet about tonight's presentation and program, about tonight's proceedings, using the hashtag #LearningInnovation. After our keynote speaker's presentation, I will then start the conversation with a few questions, and will invite you to ask questions using the microphones that we will place on either side of the auditorium. So if you have a question, please feel free to make your way to the microphones, or you can also send your questions electronically, tweet them at Excite Center. If you tweet them there, we will be watching that, and we will be selecting questions to convey as well. And then, of course, after the conversation, we hope that you'll join us for a reception right afterwards in the lobby so that we can get to know each other a little better. So most importantly, we're hoping that you'll be inspired by the spirit of this program and want to continue to engage with us. If you'd like to learn more about our work or share feedback, please sign up to receive updates at the Excite Center webpage, drexel.edu/excite, and reach out, please, to let us know if you're using innovative approaches you'd like to share, or if you use anything you hear about tonight in your own practice. We can only be successful if we share what we're learning, so we need to hear from you what works, what doesn't, and why. Now, I'd like to take this time to express our thanks to several partners who have greatly assisted us with this initiative. First, our Office of University Communications and the Office of the Provost, who helped us greatly in promoting this initiative for tonight's event. I'd also like to thank in particular Larry Platt of the Philadelphia Citizen, Eric Walter of WHYY Newsworks, and Albert Hong of Technically, who generously provided platforms to inform a broad audience of these efforts. I'd also like to thank the AIGA, the Professional Association for Design, for their participation and partnership, particularly the Executive Director and CEO of AIGA, Julie Annixter, who is actually with us here tonight. Most importantly, I would like to acknowledge and introduce you to the extraordinary supporter for tonight's program. She is a dedicated designer, artist, businesswoman, and an extraordinary Philadelphian. Please join me in welcoming to the stage the supporter for tonight's event, Jessica Berwind.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Can you hear me okay? I'm not used to speaking with a microphone. I am really thrilled to have this opportunity to partner with Youngmoo and Drexel and the Excite Center to advance a passion of mine, which is how we apply what we understand about learning to our systems of education and all of our systems, which are very broken, I think, in many ways. I want to also acknowledge my team of partners down here, Catherine and Meredith, and you just came today. So I don't remember your name. Oh my God, I'm embarrassed. Simran, Jeremy, without whose help, I don't think we would have necessarily gotten this off the ground, and Youngmoo, thank you so much. So this is just the beginning of hopefully a dialogue, and hopefully you'll all continue to be engaged with the process, and I think that's all I have to say, so thank you for coming.
Thanks so much, Jessica. And thank you to all of our colleagues who have been so supportive in helping us to shape tonight's program and the overall project. So and first of all, if those of you filtering, please go ahead. There are some seats over here. Please feel free to find a seat down here. As I mentioned, this tonight is the public launch of our Learning Innovation Initiative. It's a year-long effort to explore transdisciplinary approaches to learning and their potential to foster innovative thinking and practices. At Drexel, we established the Excite Center in 2013, we think, to do just that. We like to say that we create new possibilities between technology and practice. And over the last 4 years, we've been working on everything from smart, functional fabrics to city-scale video games, to dancing with drones, to novel civic engagement pathways to support and share new approaches for designing, creating, and innovating. Our students, faculty, and partners are committed to creative practices that advance knowledge in our community so that our neighborhood, city, region, and even hopefully our nation can benefit. This often means questioning conventional wisdom to explore how we each individually approach learning while collectively shaping practices to help our communities succeed. So over the next year, how are we going to go about that? Well, first off, my colleague, Brian Smith from the School of Education, will be leading a national survey of innovative maker and learning spaces to develop a greater understanding of what works and what doesn't, and we'll share that research with you throughout the project as the study is conducted and completed in 2018. We will also be conducting student-serving pilot programs here at Drexel and experimenting with our own learning space at the Excite Center as an incubator for novel learning approaches and technologies. And of course, we'll be hosting 5 more of these conversations, just like this, where we'll bring national leaders in innovative practices to Philadelphia to challenge us with new ideas and new approaches. Now, our first speaker sets a very high bar, but we are confident that tonight is just the beginning of a year of valuable lessons in learning innovation. So, to that end, please do mark your calendars. Our next Learning Innovation conversation will be with Dr. Mimi Ito on March 21st. Mimi is the MacArthur Foundation Chair in Digital Media and Learning at the University of California, Irvine, and also CEO of Connected Camps. She'll discuss her research in youth education and its relationship with digital media, and so we hope you'll be able to join us for that event and all the follow-up speakers throughout the year. And we look forward to providing you with regular updates of our project's progress via the website drexel.edu/excite. So follow there for more updates, and of course then you can sign up also for email updates. And so we turn to tonight's main program. We are so fortunate and absolutely thrilled to be joined by an individual who embodies that transdisciplinary spirit of learning innovation. He's a self-proclaimed son of a tofu man from Seattle. After receiving bachelor's and master's degrees at MIT in software engineering, he then completed a PhD in design from Tsukuba University in Japan. For 12 years, he was a professor at the MIT Media Lab, founding and directing the Aesthetics and Computation Group. In 2008, he became the 16th president of the Rhode Island School of Design, where he spearheaded nationally the STEM to STEAM movement and was instrumental in the formation of the Congressional STEAM Caucus. In 2013, he joined the storied venture capital firm Kleiner Perkins as its first design partner. He is the recipient of the 2001 National Design Award in Communications Design. His artistic works are in the permanent collections of the Museum of Modern Art, the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art, and the Cartier Foundation in Paris. He is the author of 5 books, including The Laws of Simplicity in 2006 and Redesigning Leadership, published in 2011, and his TED Talks have over 2.5 million views. Yes, his accomplishments make the rest of us feel like total slackers. But he is now global head of computational design and inclusion at Automatic. They are the developers of WordPress. WordPress, the web serving system, web hosting system. We are so fortunate to have someone with his expertise, his openness to experimentation to help kick us off with this learning innovation initiative. Please welcome to the stage, John Maeda.
My bro. Young Moo's my bro. Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for also managing my traffic cop issue thing here. Those of you who came later, I like to fill the front rows. And the reason why is very simple, is that I never realized that speaking is a two-way thing. And if people aren't there, the speaker performs pretty poorly. I've done that in the past. For you students in the audience, always sit in the front row to put pressure on the professor. You'll get better ROI in the process. I also, as listening to Young Moo, I was thinking about how, let's see here, I wanted to put up this, I'm going to stick with a veil for a second. You know, since I've become the head of inclusion at Automatic, I've been aware that everyone lives things differently. And so I think Q&A can like frighten some people. So for those who prefer not to, let's see here, 267. Text me at 5267-544-7802 anytime during this presentation with a question, because you might not feel comfortable later getting up and asking a question. So I'll just put this up here. So if you need that, it's here. It'll come back up here. I'll pop it back here just in case. Let's put it right here. It's like a TV commercial. But that might help those who might not want to, get up and ask a question. And it'll come to my phone, and don't be afraid to do so, because I don't stalk people back. I'm not like that kind of person. I'm pretty passive in that way. Okay, so with that began. Yeah, well, look, everyone's, hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm here with you. I'm right here with you. Yeah, exactly. Wow, they're all coming in. Hi back. I'll turn the ringer down a little bit. Okay, but keep them coming in. So today I visited your radio station, one of your radio stations. Why? You guys are existential here. Like, why? WHYY, And had a great talk with Dave, one of the hosts of one of the shows. And there was this great moment where there was this class. It was a class of maybe like second graders, third graders. They were visiting, like a field trip, visiting like the public radio station. and they were all there. And there were maybe 15 of them, probably second, third graders, And then they came up to me and said, "We think you're an important person. That's why you're here being interviewed. Could you say something to the students?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And they're very little, and the teacher was there, and one of the young men asked me, how did you become important?" And I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm important, but my parents believed in this thing called education. And they believed that if I went to school and did well, that wonderful problem that many of you probably had when you were kids, where your parents just don't want you to become anything creative, right? I want to be an artist. No, I don't think you're going to become an artist. Be a lawyer or doctor, something good, And so my parents were very pro-science. And so I knew I had to study science. And as a typical immigrant family, you don't know about that many colleges except the famous ones. And so it was MIT or Harvard. Those are the good schools. And so we were told we should go to one of these schools. And so even when I was little, I would say, I want to go to MIT. Even though I was in Seattle, Washington, we didn't know what the M stood for, but it was MIT, And then one year I had this teacher, Mr. Wakefield, and it was my 10th grade year. I was telling the kids this about how Mr. Wakefield, I still remember him. And I said, I want to go to MIT. And he was a retired Boeing engineer who was spending his life in teaching after he'd been an engineer for so long in Boeing. And he pulled me aside and said, "You'll never get into MIT because you don't have all the right things that you'll need to get into MIT. That young man over there who's the same year as you, he has all the right things. His parents know what to do. You need this and this and this to get there." And one of the thises was you have to go to summer school at the local college to get ahead, just get ahead, get a little bit extra. And I remember going home to tell my parents, my teacher, Mr. Wakefield, says I have to do this summer class. And of course, my parents would say, "No, you have to work at the store. You can't go take time off to go to college classes over the summer. You got to work." So I told Mr. Wakefield I couldn't do it. And then a month later, he was at the store. He doesn't buy tofu, but mind you. He just showed up at the store and talked to my parents and said, "Your son's got to go to this summer program at the college." And then they kind of said, "Well, I guess you got to go." So I was explaining to them that education as a construct is important, but teachers are even more important as a construct because they are the inflection point. They move things for you. Some of them go above and beyond. They're very rare, but that's what I conveyed to them. Let's see what mail I have so far. A lot of mail. Does it matter if we still use our hands to create? 215. Peter. Yes. What is innovative at WordPress? Working on that. How many second or third graders, this is to the 267, how many second or third graders do you think you could fight and win against? I'm a pacifist, lover, not a fighter. Okay, back to this program. So, education matters, teachers matter more. There are special, who had a teacher that changed their life? Just one teacher? Look at this, it's easily 80% of the room. So, something about that. And so, when I became a professor at MIT, I vowed to be someone like Mr. Wakefield. I remember that. And so we pass on these ideals. People who do right do matter. I firmly believe in that. Now, I had this great experience because today, before you were all here, there was a special seminar that was run by 3 designers from the company I'm at, Automatic. There were Alan Cole, Jack, and Ashley. Alan, Jack, Ashley, are you here? You're there? Yeah. So they gave a seminar on computational design. Now, why is it important? It's important because, you see, in the 90s, I remember when it was very rare for people in the arts, design, to want to learn how to code, write software. Like some of you, yes, some of you from my generation, you know that claymation thing, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? You know? And you know how like there's that island of misfit toys, right? It's like the bad place for the broken toys. Well, in the 90s, as a person saying that people should like program as designers, I was on that island. It was barren and lonely. But I realized 20 years later that it's still very, very rare for people to cross these boundaries. Even in 2017, I imagine that almost all art and design programs do not create people who can write code. And what is the problem? The problem is that they can't get jobs. And people tell me, well, why should they get jobs? It's not bad to be employable. I see nothing wrong with it. But the problem is they don't exist in large quantities. And so I think that industry can play a role in educating more people about technology. And so I was so proud to get to listen to Alan and Jack and Ashley give their perspectives on why it's important to code, what coding is, how it can impact your life, how no matter how old you are or how unskilled you are, it's possible to learn how to code. And if you learn how to code, you understand how the world works. Because the world is driven by computation as we all know it today. I'm sure you've heard of this thing called Facebook. Yeah, that's all code. And as we consume all these services, if we don't understand how they will work the way they are programmed to. And who programs these things? People. And if these people do not share your values, they will write code to impose upon you their values. So the only way to break free as a creative person is to understand how to code. So we'll be putting these materials online if you're curious about what they shared. It was everything from beginner, intermediate, advanced. I had such a good learning experience. So to give you context of why I care about coding and art in general, I was lucky to go to MIT. I remember when I arrived at MIT, it really was the culmination of my family's dreams. We were on the West Coast. I remember how I suddenly understood why Sesame Street looks like that. Because we had a big yard, and we were like, why are they on the street? Like, why are they sitting on the street? And I was like, oh, East Coast is like this. And so it was like all awakening. And I remember being really happy because I didn't have to work at the store anymore. So it was so much easier, so less physically taxing. And I'll never forget how when the upperclassmen in my dorm were all very stressed out because they were studying for this test called the GRE. And I was like, what is that? Because we just took the SATs, aren't we done? And they said, no, I want to get into graduate school. And I said, what is that thing, graduate school? So I called up my father and said, there's something called graduate school. And he said, you better go to it. So it's always been kind of like that for me. But I got lucky because I hit a wall. I was a PhD student at the Media Lab, and I had a bad professor. Has anyone ever had a bad boss? Well, yeah, this is like the same as the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer thing. Yeah, bad boss. I had a bad boss, and I was lucky I had a bad boss because I decided to drop out. I dropped out, and I pursued art and design instead of technology. And this was in the 90s. And what I did since that moment is fuse the classical view of art and design with computer science and engineering. And this image is the first image I made in 1993 that was the turning point, because the problem with an engineering education is you learn how to make things. Like, who's an engineer? Engineering? You are good at making things. But the problem with being good at making things is you don't know what to make. You know how to make something better, but you don't know what to make. And so what I loved about being in a pure art and design education is it was all about what do I make? Because knowing what I want to make can tell me what to make. And so I began to make things much easier. It wasn't hard to take computer science and make things that were a bit different. Now, I say a bit different because I realized that everything in life is timing. And so in the 90s, nobody could make things that I could make. I could write and code. There were maybe like 3 people in the world that could do it. And I was able to have a great ride where I was the guy that could make stuff that was super complex. But I was lucky because I had good teachers. My professors in art school, one of them said to me, "You know, John, this is really great that you're successful at doing this, but there aren't many people out there that can do this. So how do you know if you're good or not?" It's like, yeah, I don't know if I'm any good or not. And they said the solution was to become a professor and educate students who would become better than you, so one day they would come and destroy you. That sounded awesome, right? So in the 90s, I went back to MIT as a professor, and I led this intersection of computation and design, again, during a very bleak time where this was considered an odd activity. It had no industrial value at the time. The internet hadn't taken off at the time. So what happened is I became very curious about not just design, but art as well. You see a heart pass by, it was a little bit subliminal. I've been very curious because most people who love design have a problem with art. Do you know these people? They're like, "Oh, I love design, but art, I don't know. Makes me uncomfortable." You know? So I've been researching this phenomenon of art because in the same way that if you love engineering, you have to love science, because science is the generator of all the greatness that lives in engineering. If you talk to the engineering department person, they'll tell you the opposite. I know that. But the same way with design and art. They're connected together. And I love how art's hidden in everything. It's a bit like an M. Night Shyamalan movie, a little spooky. Art is in heart. There's a great bumper sticker that says if you remove art from earth, it becomes eh. So art is essential to everything, really. It's hard to understand. And so what I like to do is I like to help people who've never understood art to understand that art isn't something to understand. It also isn't something you go looking for in necessarily a museum. Now, I travel a lot, and many airports have these wonderful art promenades, you know, these, don't go to a museum, go to the airport instead, right? And it's like, oh my gosh, this art is in the airport. And this was a seaplane, a brass seaplane, you know, it's beautiful. I was stuck in Santa Barbara for a few hours, so I was staring at the seaplane, oh, beautiful, you know? But then I discovered that art is everywhere if you look for it. So I began a hunt for things in bathrooms, public bathrooms in the airport. And this is from my bathroom series. This is something I walked into the men's room at Logan and discovered this incredible kinetic sculpture. I was like, whoa, this is like amazing. Like, who thought of this? And I could have sat there and filmed this forever, but people started walking in, so it's got a bit awkward. But I began a hunt from this moment to find art in the bathroom. This is from my toilet paper series. You all know that when you go to a public bathroom with like metal everywhere, you want the toilet paper to be in the metallic thing. And when it's sitting outside, you feel a little bit scared. So this one I was like, whoa, why isn't it inside its housing? And I thought, why are all these other rolls here? And this made me concerned, naturally. But it was a beautiful display. Like, what person made this art? And why do I bring this up? Why do we respond to it? It's because it isn't art. Art is made by ourselves. It is how we see the world, and it's our ability to see the world differently and to find something extraordinary in it. And by realizing that, I always tell executives who care about design that they have to care about art. And when they tell me, I don't get art, I always tell them that art is about the enigma. It's about the paradox. So if you don't get art, that means art is functioning. So it's okay. Still, CEOs don't like that explanation, but it works for me. Now, if you think about design, we think of this brand Apple, I'm sure. This is before they took away the headphone jack, mind you. But why is Apple so successful at design has always been a question by a lot of companies. And I give them a very simple answer. The only reason why Apple is successful at design is because they've been doing it for over 30 years. It isn't like they suddenly got good at design. They were doing design back in the 80s when nobody wanted computers. Imagine a business model like this. There's this thing called a computer. You don't need it. And it's really expensive. Now, I'm going to make it twice as expensive and half as fast as the other computer. It's designed to look amazing. Who's going to buy that thing? Nobody. Terrible failure in business for much of its early years because it was too expensive and it was lower quality from a technology perspective. But over time, what happened is that amazing man Tim Cook arrived. And Tim Cook brought a business perspective to Apple. He posited the following. If you want to make a computer out of aluminum, you know, Johnny Ive British accent aluminum, we need to lock down all the CNC milling machines that can do this. We need to lock down the largest aluminum supply in Australia. We need to move the factories next to the airport. In doing so, we're going to reduce the cost of producing this amazing machine and produce a high enough margin and high enough volume to achieve business success and design success. It's such an important thing because Apple's story isn't a story of great design. It's a great story of great business that fueled good design. Now, what is the problem today? I kind of alluded to it about why I wish some of you could have attended the seminar that I got to attend today. It's the fact that art and design programs do not produce the kind of graduate that industry needs today. Why is that? Engineering education also is failing to produce the kind of person that can thrive and make the next Apple. Why is that? It's a very simple reason. It's not a hard reason to fathom. If you think about all the different art schools out there, art and design programs, there is a kind of cartel that runs behind all of them. It's the accreditation bodies. If you don't know it, they're out there. And their job is to make sure that everyone is the same and a little better each year. Who runs these cartels? The very people who are in the system. And therefore, they cannot change the system because they are part of the system. Same thing exists for engineering education. Engineering education also has these cartels. And the cartels work to secure the single most important asset, which is how many hours of the student's education can I monopolize while they are in college? Do you have enough credits to graduate? No. We're going to fix that, right? You don't have enough. You can't graduate. But why are all my credits in this same major? Because that's how you become a good X. And that's how they trap you. And they grow that to such a high degree that you become a monopolized mind. It's not their fault. It's the system dynamics that create this situation. Everyone's trapped in it, but the people that are trapped in it most are the students themselves. Luckily, we have places like Commercial, Excite, which truly are interdisciplinary places. It is very rare in universities today to have interdisciplinary places. Why is it? Because disciplines wish to destroy these places. Why? Because they should not exist. That's the reasoning. Now, if these places that don't bridge this chasm between polarized education don't exist, there will be no growth in innovation, in technology, in culture, and that, I believe, is not a good thing. So how do we get there? It's been a question I've been trying to ask. Now, turns out that the challenge lives in organizations and how they cannot transform. So I've been a student of organizations for a while. Why? It's because I had this wonderful accident in the year 2001. 2001 was a great year. It was a terrible year financially. It was the dot-com bust. I was a tenure track professor. Being tenure track is worse than being a tenured professor, if you don't know that. So I was a senior tenure track professor. The economy tanked. My then boss, Nicholas Negroponte, wanted to retire. And when he wanted to retire, all the people around him wanted to take the place over, right? Power play. So he got mad about this. What did he do? He put the two people in charge who didn't want to be in charge as a scientific experiment. I was one of those scientific experiments. And again, I was a, untenured professor, doing something like that was sort of career suicide, but, I can write code. I can design this stuff. I've got this all figured out, I'm 31. It's awesome. I can do that. But I discovered I was terrible at it because I couldn't fill the bathrooms with enough toilet paper. Echo. There were all these angry people coming to talk to me. I was like, whoa. And I didn't have the emotional intelligence to manage what was clearly a difficult administrative role. So I left that role after a year. I suddenly stopped doing that. And I vowed to get more education. So I got an MBA as a hobby for that reason. I should tell you how that happened. I was tenured by then. Being tenured means people can't fire you anymore. It's a terrible situation. It means you can come to work every day and staple 5 pieces of paper and have a latte and live like that. It bothered me, so I wanted to learn more. So my assistant at the time found some MIT HR benefit to do side studies, take a class, So, whoa, can I do that? I'm an employee. I could probably do that. So I went to the HR office and asked if I could get this. It was like, a couple $1,000s a year, a little credit, class credit. I said, hey, can I apply for this? And the gentleman said, you can't apply for this. You're like a full professor. You can't do this. I said, well, why not? He said, well, you're supposed to fill this form out, and you have to specify what you're going to become. You're already done. So I took the form back, and I thought, oh, okay, So it was a 1-page form, a really easy-peasy form, and I filled it out, and it said, what's the next job you're after? I wrote down president of MIT. Because I thought, if he doesn't give it to me, and I do become president, I'll come after him someday. Sure enough, he gave me the benefit, and that's how I got my MBA part-time. Anyways, it drove me to study organizations and how they work. And in 2008, it was a very important year for me because I'd finished my MBA. I had begun to understand that the world is an interesting place. And someone gave me this book called The Audacity of Hope. And I was like, whoa, what is this book? This is really inspiring. And that guy's going to try to become president? It's impossible. And then Spencer Stewart called me up, the headhunters. And they said, hey, you want to be president of a college? And I was like, I can't do that. I don't have experience. I've never been a dean or a vice provost or a provost. I can't become president. Then I heard that voice in my mind. Yes, we can. I said, yeah, I can probably do that. Yeah, I can do that. Became president in 2008, right during the global financial crisis that arrived. I didn't know how to run an organization of that scale, but I had to learn very quickly. I'm very grateful that those things happened because I had to become a better operator very fast. What I discovered, though, is that if you arrive in times that are difficult, people do not want to remember you nicely. It's hard to recover. I should also reveal, someone had this nice book, Redesigning Leadership, that I wrote. The book, Redesigning Leadership, that I wrote, it's an 80-page book on my questions about leadership. When it came out, it was in the middle of my being voted no confidence by the entire faculty of the institution. They're like, whoa, what's he saying? He can be a leader. I said, well, if you read the book, I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure it out, you know? By the way, in that year of 2011, I was one of 1% of college presidents that were voted no confidence. I was also of the 0.001% that survived a vote no confidence. Interestingly, the CIA contacted me to ask me how I did that. But it's because I've been curious about organizations, people, how they operate, how they don't operate. And what I discovered is that this challenge that we exist in today is we're living in a time where technology has flattened the hierarchy. You know the hierarchy? The hierarchy is you can't talk to me, you have to talk through me. You have to talk levels through me. You have an appointment to talk to me, and you can't talk to me. That was the old days, but now because of technology, you can talk to everybody. There aren't those walls to protect people anymore, and that's a very uncomfortable situation because the hierarchy has become more of a heterarchy, and because of technology. And this difference in the mechanics of the world is so different than a hierarchy that we're in this generational shift right now of organizations at all scale. No one knows the answer. Everyone knows that it's just, I wish things were the old way because they made sense the old way. Can we make it go back that way? It's a simple tendency. There's no judgment here. This is likely to occur. Because in the old days, when you had the leader, this is the, I have two polls here. In the old days, the leader could always be right. I'm right. And everyone else who is under the leader is like, I don't have all these facts. I don't know. Let me trust the leader. But the new day, people can read everything, can find everything out. So a leader's ability to lead is easily questioned. And this new era that we live in organizations of all scale, is a new reality. But this reality, people want it to go away. In this new reality, you don't have this old way of, I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to have a meeting, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to walk, and I'm going to drink, and I'm going to email. Now it's 24/7, full exposure. And so this world is a difficult world for anyone who doesn't want to live in it. But as I've said, the reason why I love to be with the millennials is they're teaching me so much about their world. It's an exciting world. It's a world of possibility. I should stay on time. This is my last slide I'll share with you, and I have lots of messages in here to cover. So who leads something? Who's a leader? Leader? Your leader. Yeah. Not easy, huh? A leader. You know, the thing about leading, leading is pressure on you. It's, I have a friend, she's a scientist. She's a science educator. She's amazing, Debbie. She talks about how, she uses metaphors, and so she talks about how a woman's stiletto heel, that little tiny surface area, the pressure on that is the equivalent to an elephant. No weight judgment here. Just like, ouch, pain. So a leader is always feeling the pain. What is that pain? I wanted to depict it. So for 1 year at Davos, I gave a presentation on what leadership looks like. So if you're a leader of an older organization, it has a past. That past gets in the way so often. So a leader is someone whose job it is to bridge the past into the future by standing in the present. Why is it so hard to be a leader of such an organization? It's because you are the fulcrum for everything. You feel the pressure on your body, and you're being judged at all times. And there's only one game in this system. You're this basically a seesaw. You see the ball on the back of the seesaw? There's only 3 scenarios for this game. One scenario is you move the ball into the future. You won. That's the yay scenario. That's a good one. Then there's scenario 2. This is not a good scenario. This is where things go backwards. That's the less yay scenario. Depends on what side you're on, of course. Then there's scenario 3 is the bloody Tarantino scenario. You lose. And the leader operates largely alone. It's a spectator sport. People are waiting to see which scenario you're going to end up in. And what I've discovered over time is that creative people think they cannot be leaders. I wish to tell you that creative people make the best leaders because they have a kind of audacity and curiosity and agility to live in a more hierarchical world. And it's that unique quality that will be rewarded in industry, and I hope in academia as well. So for those of you who are leaders, I guarantee you'll never get to 3 because you move too fast. They can't stop you. So I was president of Rhode Island School of Design for 6 years. I worked in venture capital, where I learned how money is used at incredible scales. And why did I join the startup, Automatic? It's because the thing I learned in venture capital is you can either be someone who's watching all the money, or you can make a difference on the ground. And so I wanted to be on the ground, to work with younger people, to learn from them, and to hopefully grow with them as well. And I keep referring to it, but just today, to sit in the seminar with Jack and Ellen and Ashley made me remember why I wanted to do what I'm doing now. I'm the head of design and inclusion. What is this word inclusion? Right? He's the head of design, head of inclusion. The reason why I added the word inclusion is because I wanted to work also on the question of answering this question that arose in my mind is why is the technology industry so non-diverse? Can I work on that personally? So I added the word inclusion because I specifically wanted to work on it, but not just for a social justice reason, but for a pragmatic reason. The more the technology companies can create software with the people, by the people who actually use it, I believe they will be financially rewarded. So that's why I'm after this. That's why I'm curious about it. And we'll see how this goes. It's an adventure. Okay, I'm on time, Young Moo. And we're going to do like a talk session here. And I have all these texts here. And that was a big plosive just now. Someone's watching YouTube live. Okay, let me answer 3 questions here. We have the same cartels in K-12. How do we innovate? 267. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, just don't lose. It seems like we are in a death spiral with lack of diversity in computer science, turning off women and minorities from pursuing computer science, which leads to further lack of diversity in computer science. What is the solution? Well, I believe the solution is more open source systems that more people can work on. It doesn't have to happen in academia. That's why I'm so curious about the WordPress ecosystem, how to get more people from different backgrounds as a part of it. You don't have to be an institution to be a part of it. So that's my play. did your parents react when you dropped out of school to study design? What did you learn from that experience? My parents are really cool. They were okay with it. End of story. My mom's side of the family had a restaurant also called The Store. Hoagie shop, though. East Coast Greeks. I went to art school and a master's in design. I know the struggle. Thank you, 484. Love America. Let's go ahead.
Well, let's thank Don for his remarks.
Thank you. How could I afford all of my education? My parents gave up everything so that we could go to college. They gave up all their savings for us. And I take care of them.
Okay. So we're going to be managing multiple streams of questions here. This is an opportunity for participation. We definitely want this to be engaging and participatory. And as we saw from earlier, John is excellent at crowd control. So we will manage this. I'll kick off with one or two questions. But again, we do have microphones that we're setting up right now. So if you'd like to ask a question in person, you can tweet at us at Excite Center. You can tweet a question there. Or, of course, then you can send your question directly.
Lots of questions here.
John, lots of questions coming up here. So, well, let me ask one first. Because obviously one of the things that you're probably most known for is your advocacy for STEAM. Right, the STEAM movement, and I think I'd love for you to tell us the story of how STEM to STEAM happens, STEM to STEAM got started, and then maybe tell us a little bit of your thoughts of what can we do to keep that going, both at a university and in K-12 as well.
Yeah. So what I realized talking to art teachers in America in particular is they were losing funding. And when they were losing funding because of STEM education. STEM education had become a priority in our nation. And in the process, I saw how so many art classes in school were going from 1 hour a week to 20 minutes a week to 20 minutes a month. And art classrooms were going away to be converted into chemistry classrooms. And so I wanted to somehow reposition how art education exists in our country. I thought it'd be important to think of STEM in relationship to art and design. But I didn't make the STEAM thing happen. How it happened was just one woman who worked in my office, Babette Alina. She had a best friend who worked in the local US representative's office. They were friends for 10 years. And they were always advocates of the arts. And also because in Rhode Island, it was such a small state that they would always take my call. And I would talk about cybersecurity, which they would like talking with the art president about. So it was all good situation. But what drove it was a friendship between Babette and Kersey in an office, and they both imagined could it be possible to launch something larger. And so I pushed my energy into that. I went to Washington, I talked to different people to tell them that STEM education alone would make better technology companies, but couldn't make a new Apple. Could it become STEAM? So it was a combination of many people getting it together, but I can tell you there was a lot of pushback. Where was there pushback? Because a lot of art educators would come up to me and say, how dare you say that art and STEM have to go together? Art alone should be good enough for any country. On the other hand, I had teachers who would say, thank you, because now we can get funding so our classroom can stay open. So it was a kind of issue where I realized anything you try, there are going to be these pros and cons, and you just hope for the best. What I was so glad is that the energy catalyzed became a movement. Now, what is the problem? The problem is that I realized that after I left and stopped engaging in that, it doesn't have a home anymore. And that's why, again, he's my bro. I was so happy when Young Mu reached out to me when I was president and said he had this idea of a STEAM idea, some kind of STEAM thing. And so I think it lives in you now.
No. No pressure, right? No pressure. Yeah, I'm flattered. No, I mean, I would have. It was funny because when you started this work and started going to Congress to advocate for STEAM and got this a bipartisan congressional caucus formed, I thought, wow, that's the last thing we need, right? The last thing we need is Congress involved in an education movement or educational policy, because I had always viewed STEAM as let's build cool things, let's make cool things and show people the power of STEAM. But I'm here to say that I was proven wrong, because I really think having that advocacy at that level has really moved the conversation forward. Now more and more people know what STEAM is, right? I mean, I'm just curious from the audience, how many of you had heard of STEAM as education? So a fair number, right? I mean, and I think that number would have been much, much less just 5-6 years ago. So again, my hat's off to you for leading that charge.
Well, for those who raised their hands as leaders, I want to note that when I began doing this type of STEAM advocacy, I was vilified for doing this on campus. But I want to note that everything just takes time. Like in year 3, when people were talking about it, it was their idea. We've been doing this forever, didn't you know that? I wanted to pause on leaders for a second.
Please.
I'll never forget how, is this webcast? Well, I don't know, everything is webcast now. I'll never forget how I really love the idea of students being able to make a living after they graduate. I find it really a good idea. I like the idea of them eating with money that they made. I think it's a good idea. So this was what I really pushed very hard on campus. And I remember when Jack Dorsey came out with a square. He just 3D printed a few. And I was like, oh, I like that. And I asked Jack, could we be the first place in the country or the world to distribute these square devices at commencement? And so he said, yeah. So we were the first distributor of square devices at scale in the world at RISD commencement. Now, of course, people hated this. Like, what is this thing? What is he trying to do to us? Why would you need this thing? And then, 2 years later, I was walking somewhere, and one of the professors came up to me and said, hey, are you going to go to the exhibition, the jewelry show? I said, yeah, I go every year. Well, we have a pop-up shop this year. I said, really? We're taking credit cards. I said, oh, how are you doing that? We use this thing called a square. Do you know what it is? I said, no, what is it?
It's so funny because I know from your time at MIT, at RISD, you've crossed paths with so many of these things. I mean, whether it's Square or Jack Dorsey, founder of Twitter, or the Media Lab, where so many people started so many great initiatives. A lot of that, I think there's a misconception. This is a long-winded question, but bear with me for a second. I think there's a misconception about how things happen in Silicon Valley or in entrepreneurship in general, right? That people have brilliant ideas. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak just built something in their garage and magic just happened, right? Mark Zuckerberg coded Facebook in an evening in his dorm at Harvard, and all of a sudden Facebook happens, right? But with your recent experience, well, actually, not just your recent experiences, throughout your experiences there, what role, or can you comment on the role of design writ large, generally, in that sort of startup, entrepreneurial, more creation process?
Yeah. Well, two things. First of all, the thing I learned in venture capital is that money is very useful. Having large amounts of money to do something you want to do is really good, but only certain people get access to that money. That's the first thing. The second thing is the reason why design has become valuable is it only became valuable after the year 2009. It's because after the year 2009, the world went mobile. I mean, think of it, 10 years ago, if you had a computer in your house, it's kind of embarrassing. You have a computer in your house? Are you a nerd or something? Playing games, you know? Embarrassing. And so computers were useless. People didn't need them. But after 2009, with everyone owning a smartphone or some kind of feature phone or some computer in their hands, computing became consumerized. So suddenly, consumers, regular people, AKA non-nerds, right, Kardashian style, they need designed technology. They will not be satisfied by the IBM PC. It had to be a cultural thing. So smartphones made design important because technology was used by everyone suddenly.
So I have a couple of questions that are coming through Twitter, but your phone's going nuts too. So maybe let's check your phone. Wow. And again, if anybody wants to ask a question, the microphones are right there. Please don't be shy.
I want you to be in charge.
Oh, okay, sure.
You're the boss. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I have power now. Let's see.
There's some good ones in there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, introverts.
Yes, thank you. Oh, well, here's a good one. This is just topical. How do you think Betsy DeVos's nomination for Secretary of Education will impact STEAM?
Damn. Wow, good question. And Young Moo, tough one to throw at me.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, let me just say that I'm a little bit concerned about a lot of things right now. And I think I don't really know what to expect. All I know is that rational arguments are shifting to a different kind of rationality. That is why I'm glad that Young Moo is an education field and we'll be able to fight for it. Over here.
Wow. We hope so. And we're still figuring this out as well.
But I do want to pause on what many experts keep telling me is that, and that's the reason why I love being an automatic and focusing on technology and media systems, is that we perfected the 1 second offensive bite. And we can get so caught up in it, and it's so talkable, it's so junk foodish, that I'm concerned that we have so much junk food on the table from all sides that we can't see what the cockroaches are really eating in the background. That's a sick image, I know. So I'm more curious, what am I not seeing? How conscious am I to seeing what I'm not seeing? That's where I'm placing my attention right now.
I mean, given the current climate of things, I mean, what would you say is the role of art and design, or just greater integration in facing this reality?
I hate to be a broken record, but I think for artists and designers to go one level deeper in understanding technology is critical, because artists and designers are good consumers and they're also good makers. And if they can make a difference in this new world of media delivery systems, they're likely to design things that the world cannot experience. I was going to say see, but now I'm working with people who are non-sighted. So there are things that we haven't experienced yet because certain people have not been making things yet. So I invite more people to make things in technology, specifically with more code.
Well, following up on that, how can you have that sort of initiative or those sorts of foster those sorts of ideas even at a younger age? So we're talking, grade school, middle school, high school. I mean, pre-college. How can we instill those sorts of ideas?
I don't know. I mean, what is it? When I was at Y, the radio station. I was so, I was listening to the broadcast, and one of the broadcasts was about creativity and how essential play is And oh my gosh, the kids, when they play so much, they're more creative. And so the kids, got to let them play as long as they can. And I didn't play at all as a kid. I was working at my family's store, like the person who worked also, the Greek, didn't play at all, just worked all the time. But in that work environment, in that mess, were all kinds of interesting things to look at. Things you would never find in a play set. Let me give you an example. I remember going to Denmark one year. My children, when they were younger then, and I was in Denmark, and Denmark has these amazing toys. Denmark? The wooden toys that cost like 5 times as much as they should, but they're so beautiful, right? So I gotta get that. This is amazing. This is beautiful. So I remember bringing back, how they have that toy with the holes in it and the pegs and the hammer? You go tuck, 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 and it pops out, and you flip it over. That's a beautiful toy. I said, they're gonna love this toy. So I brought it back home, and I was like, here, this is like an important, expensive Denmark, toy, learning toy. And the first thing my second oldest did was, Daddy brought home a bed for the doll. Because it was like this. Oh, look, thanks for the doll, Daddy. I was like, wait a second, you don't get it. But what I didn't get, is that play is in our minds and what we play with. So I would urge more children to be close to real things and to find play in it. When I say real thing, I mean like real things, like even business. I hate to say it. One of the fallacies I think of community engagement by universities is it's often, we're going to help you people who have less because we have more. But in reality, a lot of them know a lot more than the students do. So I'm curious, how do you change those roles to how do we learn from people who live practically minded as part of a college education, which I understand here you actually care about?
We think so. we hope we do. No, we do. We really do try to embody that, and we have such great opportunities being in an urban center, being in part of a federal promise zone, which has challenges, but where our students are fantastic. I mean, students everywhere are fantastic, but students are really the lifeblood that carries new initiatives forward. So we're very fortunate to have our great students and these opportunities for them to take these ideas and implement and actually not just talk about it, not just theorize about it, but actually to do something and to make something.
Well, also the fact that 2 weeks ago, I asked Youngmoo if we could have a workshop, and his whole team pivoted to have a workshop because I wanted to give something back to the community, and Youngmoo, within a heartbeat, he said, let's do it. So if you have professors here with that kind of attitude, this is a badass school. I'm sorry, expletive.
No.
There we go.
One more thing then about...
Someone over there.
Oh,
He's
awesome.
tall.
Oh, great. So, yes, please.
I'd like to pick up on the creativity emphasis. So if you look at IQ scores are continuing to increase. But if you look at creativity scores, most metrics indicate they're decreasing. What do we need to do to address that?
God, that's like a really intelligent question. I know nothing about IQ scores or creativity scores. Sorry.
Well,
I don't know anything.
I mean,
Can you reframe it in a way that I can understand?
Maybe I'll slightly reframe it. I mean, creativity is a very, very difficult thing to measure, right?
Yep.
And there are, there are these tests developed many, many years ago, about, divergent thinking.
I've never taken one, so
Yeah.
I can't feel it.
I'll give you a paperclip. How many things can you do in 30 seconds with this paperclip?
I would fail that.
Well, again, I think that there's kind of a question about the metrics. Now, some of those metrics do indicate that creativity across in this country is declining, whereas the IQ scores are increasing. I mean, is that the way we should measure creativity? Maybe that's a good way to think about it.
I'm syncing with your mind now through Youngmoo. Thank you. I could be totally wrong about what's in your mind, because it's hard to mind meld across this distance. The idea of creativity, to me, implies some dimension of being able to take in many sources, and therefore it's divergent. That's why I added inclusion to my title, because I realized that I was becoming less creative the older I got, because I was shutting myself off from new things as I knew them so well, as I mastered them so well. So people ask you why I change things, why I do different things. It's because I need to be exposed to new inputs. Now, I think the education system, it's hard to create that. It's hard to create that experience for a student. That's why I'm a big fan of people who break out of their major. Who's broken out of their major? See that? You have total Shawshank Redemption people. They get a spoon and they break out of it, but that propensity to measure that, I don't know if it exists. On the IQ side, I think that because we have so many testable, like checkable systems today, it's probably so much easier to measure too. There's so many more instruments that are available to us. So that might lead to a bias towards thinking this is in the understandable space. But in the creative space, I think the greatest weakness today is how do we get more influences? You know how colleges operate. The more colleges cater to only the most wealthy, the less effective they will become because they're pulling from the same pools. When I was sitting with a professor emeritus at RISD one time, and she told me this thing that always stuck with me. She said how, you know, I was asking her why were some of the best graduates from like the 60s or 70s, was it the drugs? Like what was it, you know? And she said to me in a matter-of-factly way, well, it's because of the GI Bill. And the GI Bill was a gigantic reset of the education system where people from different backgrounds could go to college together for free. And I thought about that, and thought about how that kind of intellectual diversity made a huge difference. So I think creative numbers can go up if we put more attention on that question of how much intellectual diversity we're pushing into the system. Can we measure that? Unfortunately, it looks like a social justice score. I would argue it's more of a creativity score, if I believed in scores. I didn't answer your question, but I got close to it, I think. Glancing? Okay, did. I got like an eyebrow.
No, absolutely. Okay. So unfortunately, I let your phone fall asleep, so I need to wake that. Oh, we have a question right there. Yes, so please go ahead.
So I want to know what you see next for yourself. You were a professor, university president, venture capitalist. Mm-hmm. Now you're with Automatic.
Yeah.
What's next for you?
What's next? Well, according to the CEO of Automatic, I can't go anywhere anymore. So I think it is Automatic. I want to fight for open source. I do believe that open source is an alternative education system that is employer ready. And I'm looking to enable more people of all ages to get past this barrier of how hard it is to get into technology companies if you don't have experience. And
retire there?
Pardon me?
You're going to retire there?
I can't hear you. I'm going to retire there? Yeah. Well, how old am I? I don't know. I'm going to do my best. Yeah. Unless I get fired, you know. We'll see.
Another question at the mic?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the subject of creativity.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about how to formulate this question. But a lot of people who are not artistic or design-oriented or any other way, don't think of themselves as being creative. Creativity seems to be something that in most people's minds is reserved for the realm of the artistic. I completely disagree with that. I think creativity is something that everybody has within them. I just wanted you to sort of respond to that. I've had sort of interesting conversations with, oh, I'm not creative, you're creative, but I'm not creative, so I can't, Anyway,
Yeah.
my question is, how do we help people understand that they are creative, whether they're artistic or not artistic? artistic.
Thank you.
And they don't have to be separated in that way, I guess.
I think one solution that just dawned upon me while listening to your question was, in a sense, that's why STEAM is a useful construct. Because going back to the people who were mad at me for saying, what about art education by itself, you know? On the other hand, you have STEM educators saying, well, why do we need art? We're creative already, you know? It's about touching at that place where, yes, if you're an engineer, you're truly creative. If you're a scientist, you're creative. If you're an artist and designer, you're creative, but also you can also make things in ways you didn't think you could make. So maybe by keeping those letters together, it creates more friction. What is it? My mother used to tell me the story of how, you know, how they have those, well, actually, you know, now they're so common now. You know how there's like blue chips? Oh, I used to like those, but now I can't eat too many of them. But they had those like taro chips, T-A-R-O chips. Taro potatoes are they're very stringy when you pull them out of the ground. They're very dirty, basically, and they're very hard to clean. And so, my grandmother told me this. She said the only way to clean these potatoes is to put many of the potatoes in the same pot, fill them with water, and swish them around with your hand, and all the dirt falls off. The dirt falls off because of the friction of the potatoes hitting each other. So I kind of think that that can happen with more places where it's okay to be a hybrid, because universities, even K-12, I imagine, produces people who are not hybrids. You're told that you're not any good at what you do if you do one thing. Now, what changed my life, what helped me leave that frame in my late 20s was, because at the time, I was MIT, I was device physics, I was all these kind of things, and people always tell me, John, you gotta focus on one thing. Just be good at one thing, you know? And so I was stressed out in my late 20s. And Igarashi Takanobu, a sculptor, I told him this problem that I had. And he said, well, John, there's two ways to live life. And he framed it as an Eastern way and a Western way. And he said that in the Eastern way, you do a lot of things. And you're building a mountain as you're going. In the Western way, you'd be good at one thing. And he said, the Eastern way, you'll build this like kind of dirty hill, this little bump, you know, and in the Western way, you're gonna be really good, and your hill is kind of narrow, but it goes up. And he said, but the beauty of this way is by the time you're old, it becomes more solid as a mound. These set of skills holds you together, so you become immovable. And he said, this way you get higher, but he said, one thing's wrong along the way, it all falls over. So I like that metaphor as a way to think about how a broad base of skills keeps you immovable and strong enough to manage change.
Oh, yes. Really great question here from Twitter that I want to ask. How do you stay positive/motivated/sane amidst the pushback against your new ideas?
Oh, gosh. I feel really lucky that, well, just to give you an example, this is like on the internet, so this is a bad situation. But well, you know, life is short. I get hit by a car tomorrow, so let's get this conversation over. So I remember when I was voted no confidence, and all these like vultures coming, and like the crows and whatever, and one of the faculty union heads, they came to my office. The whole henchmen came together to my office, and they wanted to tell me that. One of them said to me, John, you've succeeded all your life, and now we've shown you how you can fail publicly. How does that feel? And I thought, wow, this is very dark. And so I responded back, well, how many times do you think I failed to succeed even once? And I believe that. So I'm very comfortable with failure. And it's funny because in Silicon Valley, we deify failure, like fail fast, fail fast. But I never really grokked with that. What I loved is in that sad moment when the world had lost Nelson Mandela, there was those different phrases he said that were so inspiring. One of them was, don't judge me by how every time I fell down. Judge me how every time I fell down, I got up again. So its ability to not fail fast, its ability to recover fast. But nobody framed it better than Don Norman. Last week I was visiting Don Norman, the famous cognitive scientist designer, who said that he hates failing. He absolutely hates failing. But everyone makes errors. And he said, when you make an error and you've learned why you've made that error, technically you haven't failed because you learned something. So I think being a good learner is a way to have a positive attitude. Like, whoa, bad. Get up. Did I learn? I learned. Let's get going again.
We have a question over here. Great.
Hi. I'm a professor of dance, and so I spend most of my day in the studio moving and creating phrases. And the students I work with have a very strong kinesthetic sense. Moving in an expressive way is their way of knowing and learning about the world. And so my question is, how can technology better encourage physical activity and interaction? Because after I teach my classes, my dancers are sweating, we're excited, we're in this creative place, and then they go down and sit and they turn on their phone. And there's an energetic shift and a psychological shift that happens. And I think that needs to be addressed more.
How does that get addressed? It gets addressed by people who are dancers rethinking how media works and behaves. Think about it. Think about how Facebook was designed by antisocial people. And it's propagated. So what do you get? You get a flavor of that. So if you think of people who live in their body and understand it, they're going to design different kind of computation for their life.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hang out with Young Moo. He's got some stuff.
I have. I actually danced in the Excite Center.
She did. It's fantastic. Well, let's drill that just on that one topic, then sort of the digital to the physical.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're saying, we need designers who can code. We need kids who are good at making real things and making tangible things. Can you talk about where you might see the future going in terms of computation, but also physical artifacts?
Oh, physical artifacts. Well, if you want to look at the physical world, please visit tangible.media.mit.edu, the work of Hiroshi Ishii, I-S-H-I-I. He's really, the thing about academia that I love is there are some professors who just keep on going. You'll figure they're going to burn out, but no, they keep on going. And Hiroshi Ishii's work has been questioning the position of atoms in relationship to bits since the 90s, and he just hasn't stopped. And if you visit his site that shows the variety of experiments ranging from a suit of dancers dancing and the sweat releasing these fins using a kind of a biotech-oriented solution, or floating things in space, like we're talking serious floating stuff in space, or things that can twist on their own with their own energy, just using pneumatics. So I think of his work as the kind of work to look for inspiration around. I have nothing good in my own repertoire for that.
So we're almost out of time, but I want to. Oh, sorry, we do have one question over there, and then I have a special surprise.
I won't take much time, but I'm from the business school. And one of the things that I noticed in your talk was you did talk about organizations, your experience, but the business link was sort of not that clear for me at least. One of the things that I observed in business schools is that this design thinking and design research concepts, at least in management, are still in the periphery. That surprises me. Not many schools are actually really doing serious research about design thinking. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know what your experiences are on that. But what are some of the organizational design issues that you have come across in your experiences so far? What are some of the questions that could be, that we business school professors could also explore to bring this concept of design, beyond just products and services at the level of, to the level of organizations and collectives and teams?
First of all, I love business schools. They have really good food there. It's a little better. If a student just go eat where they eat, it's much better. Secondly, when I did my MBA, I thought it was so interesting how most business school professors don't have MBAs. Pause. What? You give a degree, but you don't have the degree? It's also a business. I realized that business schools are so optimized for what matters at the moment. I admire business schools because they're market-driven. Now, the challenge with design interacting with business is that there is a movement afoot, at least for the last decade, about bringing design thinking, how designers innovate, into businesses. And why has this been a difficult fight? It's been difficult because the majority of CEOs don't really care about design. And why would I care about design thinking? Because how are they judged? They're judged by numerical markers. And going back to your creativity question, and someone actually asked in the text message, isn't design a marker? Isn't it a measurable marker? No, it isn't. That's why I've been on the hunt, and maybe you may have more of this data, but I've been on the hunt for more companies that embody this ability to fund high-quality design with their profits. Because those companies are achieving scale with design. That's design earning, design profiting. And unless we highlight that as the outcome of design thinking, then all we'll get is great rooms with whiteboards and post-it notes, and everyone's sort of happy, but aren't sure what happened. Yeah. Go business school. I love business school.
All right. Well, we really are almost out of time, but so we have a lot of questions backed up, so we're going to finish with the lightning round. Oh. It's a rapid fire. I'm going to get through as many questions as I can.
He's so creative.
Okay, in just a few minutes. Okay, somebody want to time us? We'll give us about 2 minutes here. So, okay, ready, set, go. All right, what schools are leading in the way of interdisciplinary efforts?
Drexel.
Where do you think an engineering student should be looking for opportunities found at the intersection of art and science?
Business school.
Okay. What are the most interesting intersections that you have seen between technology and design, or that inspire you?
Anyone working in JavaScript and developing, I respect because it's a terrible language.
What do you feel about more women in IT jobs, coding, and the like?
Yes.
Do you think it's important to encourage artists to appreciate design in the same way you encourage designers to appreciate art?
Artists can do whatever the heck they want to do.
Let's see. What innovative and successful models of education that buck the disciplinary cartels do you see in existence today? And they put the caveat, apart from Excite.
Darn! Oh, wow. You know, I hate to sell Excite and Drexel for a second, but I've come to the realization that universities that don't work with the community are really doing bad things. Because it isn't good for the students. It doesn't give them access to real people and education around it. So I don't know of other schools like yours that try to do this work. So until I do, I will have to say no comment.
Any suggestions of open source stuff for pushing design in K-12 education?
WordPress.
The select pool of people that have access to VC or seed money, does that hurt innovation? And if so, how do we help creative people in this regard?
Number one, it hurts innovation because it means that if you're a wealthy, young Stanford Caucasian male, you're making things that only you know about. And some of them can do better than others, but that scope is narrow. What should happen differently? There should be more capitalists funding people who are different, people with different backgrounds. They should be putting their money into this important, different kind of reality.
2 more. Can you talk more about the barriers to entering the tech field and jobs, and how open source is a path forward?
The barrier to entry to these jobs is understanding coding, and not just HTML. It's understanding computation and algorithms. And once you understand them, you're able to be competitive with others who can do this kind of work. You also have to understand data, statistics, people. You have to love people. The problem with most introverts is you don't love people. That's okay. You don't have to love them. You can just kind of half like them, and it'll be okay.
All right, last one. From the questioner, I have multiple ideas that I think could solve the ugly design and ineffective interaction of comments on posts, but I'm a mechanical engineer. How should I make this a reality?
Why don't learn how to develop and code it in WordPress.
All right. John Maeda, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, bro. Thank you. All right. Go home. There we go.